our fans to understand that playing 82 games in the 80s and 90s is not the same as playing 82 games in the 2020s.
When LeBron passes up Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in points, and he will this year, will that make him the greatest player ever?
LeBron James recently made comments on a podcast about how today's NBA is different from previous eras. On the surface, his point sounded fairly reasonable, but many old-school fans and former players took his words in a completely different light. To them, it felt like a subtle shot at the generation that built the league, and apparently, Shaquille O'Neal, the man who won 3 championships alongside Kobe Bryant, had finally heard enough. What reportedly happened afterward in the tunnel following the Lakers-Knicks game was anything but friendly. Drop a comment below. Do you believe LeBron's remarks about the modern NBA were actually disrespectful toward Michael Jordan and his era? Or is Shaq simply reacting to comments that were blown out of proportion? Be honest. Before jumping to conclusions, though, it's important to look at the full context, something that has largely been lost in all the noise surrounding the situation.
He's so pissed off about, at some point, like you said, there'd be a conversation that'd be brought up again, and hopefully we can kind of figure it out and get to a better place about it, because the game is different. Like, I want people to understand, and our fans to understand, that playing 82 games in the 80s and 90s is not the same as playing 82 games in the 2020s. It's just not. The way we play, the level of pace, the level of the speed that we're playing at, it's a different game now. It's a totally different game. And, it's a lot of soft tissue injuries that's happened now because of it. I hope we can get a handle on that as well, because that's big.
The Los Angeles Lakers had just fallen to the New York Knicks 112-100. It wasn't a humiliating blowout or some unforgettable disaster, just another regular season loss that normally would have faded from the headlines within a day. But this night carried a different kind of tension beneath the surface. Because long before the final buzzer sounded, LeBron James had already stirred conversation with comments he made during a podcast appearance, and as those remarks spread across social media and through NBA circles, they quickly reached the people who take the league's history personally, the former players and old-school voices who have little tolerance for anything they see as rewriting the past. Suddenly, a routine loss became tied to a much bigger conversation, one that had been building quietly long before tip-off even began.
When I first came into the league, Reese, some of the biggest concerns of injuries was a high ankle sprain. You was afraid to step on somebody's ankle because there was 4 or 5 guys sitting in the paint. So, guys with athleticism, myself, Tracy McGrady, Vince Carter, to name a couple guys, sometimes you're afraid to take off into the lane because there was 4 or 5 guys sitting in the paint. And if you land on somebody's ankle, you get a high ankle sprain, you out 4 to 6 weeks. Now that's not really much of you don't really see that as much now because the game is so spread open, it's so much pace, but now you see the new high ankle sprain is the calf. Right. Hopefully we can get a handle on that from a medical standpoint, but it's just a game. I just want the fans to understand that the game is a little different, and, as NBA players, we definitely want to.
The clip that sparked the entire controversy featured LeBron James talking about how today's NBA has evolved physically. He explained that calf injuries in the modern game are becoming what high ankle sprains once were in previous eras, a growing issue influenced by the way basketball is now played. His points centered on the faster, more explosive pace and space style that places different kinds of stress on players' bodies and muscle groups. At face value, the argument sounded more analytical than disrespectful. It came across as the type of observation you'd expect from a sports scientist, medical expert, or team trainer studying how the physical demands of basketball have changed over time. Rather than attacking past generations, LeBron appeared to be describing how the modern NBA requires constant sprinting, spacing, and movement in ways that create entirely new injury concerns.
Hold on. You said LeBron James the greatest player ever?
Ever.
What about Michael and Kobe? So you just gonna pass Kobe up like that?
I'm gonna pass Kobe up. I'm gonna look at Michael. I'm gonna look at the I'm gonna look at that.
I knew it. I knew it. Patron, America.
Yo.
Patron, America.
Kobe Bryant couldn't fill, or Michael Jordan fill LeBron's shoes. The impact that he's had with different teammates, different organizations.
Would you be mad at me if I just walked off the show?
But that is not the way Shaquille O'Neal interpreted it. And he was not alone. Many former players from earlier eras heard something entirely different in LeBron James's comments. To them, it sounded less like a medical observation and more like an attempt to redefine what toughness means in professional basketball. Whether intentional or not, they felt the message implied that today's game is more demanding in ways the older generations supposedly never experienced. For players who survived the brutal physicality of past NBA eras, hand-checking on every possession, hard fouls in the paint, elbows under the rim, and a league culture that often rewarded intimidation, that idea struck a nerve. These were players who competed before modern flagrant foul rules tightened the game, and before player protection became such a major focus. From their perspective, comments like LeBron's can sound like a subtle dismissal of everything they endured to build their careers. So when LeBron walked through the tunnel following the New York Knicks loss, the atmosphere reportedly felt tense long before anyone exchanged words. According to accounts from fans and media members nearby, Shaq positioned himself directly in LeBron's path. It wasn't described as a casual interaction or a quick greeting in passing. The moment carried intention. And when a figure like Shaquille O'Neal, a towering presence at 7'1" and over 300 pounds, deliberately stands in front of someone to make sure a conversation happens, the message is hard to misunderstand. It signals that whatever needed to be said was going to be addressed face to face and on his terms.
Hold on. You said LeBron James the greatest player ever?
Ever.
What about Michael and Kobe? So you just gonna pass Kobe up like that?
I'm gonna pass Kobe up. I'm gonna look at Michael. Kobe Bryant couldn't fill, or Michael Jordan fill LeBron's shoes. The impact that he's had with different teammates, different organizations.
Would you be mad at me if I just walked off the show?
You can't leave.
Are you aware that this man has tripled and doubled Michael Jordan in assists?
I'm gonna say one thing to you, Max. I don't know the numbers like you do. Michael Jordan is what in the finals? 6 and what?
Oh.
And what is LeBron in the finals? That's all I got.
What exactly was said in that tunnel is still being reconstructed through different witness accounts. But the bigger message Shaquille O'Neal has been pushing for years suddenly carried far more weight after that moment. And that message deserves a deeper look because it reaches beyond one podcast remark or one disappointing loss to the Knicks. Shaq's argument is rooted in the belief that basketball greatness once carried a different kind of presence. It was never only about statistics, championships, or highlight reels. True greatness was about intimidation. It was about controlling the mental side of the game before the opening tip ever happened. Michael Jordan didn't simply defeat opponents. He made teams feel defeated before the game even unfolded. Every moment before, during, and after the contest reinforced the idea that beating him was nearly impossible. Kobe Bryant carried that same relentless aura. The intensity in his eyes, the obsession with perfection, the refusal to allow even a second of comfort for the player across from him, those traits became weapons of their own. This went beyond ordinary competitiveness. Their mentality altered the psychology of entire games because opponents were constantly battling pressure, doubt, and fear, even when Jordan or Kobe didn't have the ball in their hands.
Is he playing? I didn't hear. No, I just think that, we play in different eras. He's an unbelievable player. Yeah, he's one of the best players in the world, if not the best player in the world. I know it's a natural tendency to compare eras to eras, and it's going to continue to happen. I'm a fan of his. I love watching him play, but it's as you can see, our league is starting to expand on very talented players, and I think he's made his mark. He will continue to do so over a period of time, but when you start the comparisons, I think it is what it is.
According to Shaquille O'Neal, the biggest difference between LeBron James and Michael Jordan has never been talent or statistics. In Shaq's eyes, it is fear. Jordan created a level of psychological pressure that completely broke opponents before the game even started. Players talked about losing sleep before facing him. Teams walked onto the court already mentally exhausted, knowing one mistake could turn into humiliation. That same ruthless mentality later carried over to Kobe Bryant. Shaq believes LeBron, despite all his greatness, has never created that exact feeling around the league. Opponents respected him. They admired him. But they did not fear him in the same almost mythical way they feared Jordan. And to Shaq, that distinction matters more than people want to admit. For him, that is the line separating an all-time great from the greatest ever. Then comes the argument Shaq constantly returns to the finals record. Jordan went 6 for 6 on the biggest stage. 6 appearances, 6 championships, 6 finals MVPs. No losses, no collapse, no moment where another team figured him out when everything was on the line. That perfection has become almost impossible to argue against in the GOAT debate. LeBron's case is different. His longevity is unmatched. Making that many finals across multiple eras, rosters, and systems is an extraordinary accomplishment on its own. Nobody in basketball history has sustained elite production for this long. But Shaq's response is simple. Longevity is not the same thing as dominance. To Shaq, there is a difference between compiling greatness over 20 years and completely owning an era at your peak. He believes modern debates sometimes blur those lines together, treating accumulated numbers as equal to absolute control over the sport.